Enrique Morones is the founder and executive director of Border Angels, an all-volunteer nonprofit organization that advocates for human rights, humane immigration reform, and social justice with a focus on issues related to the U.S.-Mexican border. Enrique has dedicated his life to the prevention of thousands of migrant deaths that happen on the U.S.-Mexican border. He is the go-to expert whenever a major immigration issue faces America. We have been lucky enough to have Enrique on our show twice before, and he joins me again today to give us a first-hand account of the current situation at the U.S.-Mexican border. Enrique, thanks for coming on again. I really appreciate your time.
Brad, glad to be with you once again.
Can you just tell us a little bit of background about you and your organization for the viewers that haven't seen your interviews on my show previously?
Sure. So Border Angels is a faith-based human rights organization, nonprofit. I started it back in 1986. Our mission statement says, if I was hungry, did you give me to eat? If I was thirsty, did you give me to drink? And the main thing that we do is promote the fact that love is an action, not just a word. We put water in the desert so migrants don't die when they're crossing. We visit migrants that are in Tijuana or in northern Mexico that are seeking refuge from their home countries in Central America. We visit day laborers, people that are standing around looking for work like they do all over the world. And we have a shelter in Tijuana. We're trying to raise funds for it to triple the size so more people can be accommodated. And we also have legal services where we have volunteer immigration attorneys that come and we give them free advice. So we've been around for a long time. We're 5,000 volunteers strong. And right now, more than ever, it's important that people step up, not be silent because of everything that is taking place coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, which is not good. Yeah, we know that the people crossing borders are simply looking for a better life. And so we're here to help them in any way that we possibly can to make sure that they're secure, that they know that people love them, and that we want to give them a welcoming spirit.
Now, you were born in San Diego. You're a born U.S. citizen, but you have been crossing back and forth the border, Mexico, for years and years and years and years. Can you give me a little sense of how it's changed, how the border has changed, how the process of coming through the border has changed, how people are coming through the border with and without inspection has changed over the years?
Sure. So as you said, I was born in San Diego. My older brother and sister, parents were born in Mexico. I am a U.S. citizen. I have dual nationality. I have gone back and forth to that border, through that border, literally thousands of times. And it hasn't been until the last few months where things have dramatically changed. Just the other day when I was crossing through Customs and Border Patrol, I have my U.S. passport. They know who I am. They started questioning me about if I had taken pictures of the caravan, if I had taken video of the caravan. So I said, what caravan are you talking about? There's caravans all over the world.
Right.
And they started questioning me, and they knew that I was going to be firm about the fact that human rights and helping people is something that we're going to continue to do. So they let me through. They let me through. I was only detained for a few minutes. But there's been 4 Border Angels, also born in the United States, that were detained for 5 hours, 6 hours, interrogated. They took their phones away from them. They wanted to see pictures. And they were asking them, do you recognize these people? Do you know what's going on with these people? And our people were saying, hey, listen, we're doing human rights work, and maybe there's some people that we recognize in some of those pictures, but we have not seen any criminal activity. We do not endorse any criminal activity. And so that's something that never used to happen before, nor when we go out and put water in the desert, which we still do, did we find as many water bottles slashed as we do now. A few years ago, we'd go out there and put water. We've been doing that for 20 years. Now we're finding water bottles that are slashed in areas where only the Border Angels, the migrants, and the Border Patrol are at. And I assure you, the migrants and the Border Angels are not slashing the water bottles. We suspect the same thing that happened in Arizona with No More Deaths, where they videotaped Border Patrol slashing water bottles. We suspect the same thing is going on here because in the San Diego sector, the Border Patrol, especially the head of the Border Patrol, is out of control, and we have asked the U.S. Attorney to force his resignation.
So,
they cannot be putting their arms through the wall, shooting kids with tear gas. They cannot be walking migrants back to the wall, forcing them to jump back over. That's against international law, and we're not going to tolerate it. We're going to speak out about it.
Is there an actual lawsuit going on right now from your organization or others?
We're in the process of it. I went and met with the U.S. Attorney in San Diego, Robert Brewer. I had the Border Patrol Chief sitting right there, Rodney Scott. I called him out for all his illegal behavior, his lies and racism. Of course, he was very upset, and he said, do you have proof? And I go, absolutely. Here's videotape of Border Patrol agents tear gas gassing into Mexico. Here's videotape of a family being walked back to the wall, being forced to jump over. It's unbelievable that Rodney Scott, the Border Patrol chief, his social media is making all these crazy Trump statements. And then he says, well, at least we have a president that cares about the border. And I said, do you believe that President Obama or Bush or Clinton didn't care about the border? And these statements against President Obama are unwelcome. People are entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. And when you're in a leadership position like this, the Border Patrol chief of San Diego, you need to stay within your lane. You should not be expressing these types of opinions, because he has shared opinions to his staff. He admitted it, criticizing me. And I go, maybe that's the reason the Border Patrol agents are stopping our student groups sometimes, or the water bottles are being slashed. That is unacceptable, and we're going to rise up, speak up, and continue with our humanitarian work.
Is this a crisis that's being made because there's so many people coming at this point in time that what President Trump is saying, the numbers of people coming to the border now and trying to get through on the border are at crisis levels? Or is this more a crisis that's self-made by what President Trump is doing?
Well, I gotta admit, there is a national, actually international crisis, but that crisis is at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. There is no crisis along the border. Undocumented migration is at a 40-year low. What Trump is doing is he's showing these caravans, which are people coming in family units, unlike a decade ago when it was mainly Mexican males coming to look for work, feed their families, raise money, and go back home. Now you have these family units that are coming predominantly from Central America, escaping hunger or violence, an international right. The numbers are really low. And the ones that are trying to get in line for asylum, Trump is making it almost impossible. And it is just, we're so furious about the way that he's handling this issue, because he's spreading a lot of lies. He's spreading a lot of hate. And hate words lead to hate actions. That's why you see a rise in hate crime. You see our brethren, whether it's a temple or synagogue in Pittsburgh, or it's a school in Florida, all these shootings that are taking place, it is not by chance. It is because hate words lead to hate actions. And what Donald Trump is doing is he's spreading hate. Before it was us, the Mexicans, or now the Central Americans that were crossing, trying to have a better life, it was the Irish. It was the Italians, it was the Germans. But when they came, there was no illegal way to come. They just come. The people that are coming today, for the most part, there's no legal way to come. And U.S. policies greatly influence that migration, whether it's the U.S. demand for the illegal drugs, whether it's the U.S. interference in politics in Central America or in the Middle East. That causes people to flee. And the United States is nowhere close to the top when it comes to welcoming migrants. But it is number one in being responsible for why those migrants leave. There's two countries responsible why these refugees and migrants are leaving. The home country where they're coming from, and the United States because of their policies. The United States should be a more welcoming nation, and it's not. Most people in the United States, like most people in Iraq or China or Mexico, are good people, are loving people. But there's always that exception, those groups that are not loving people, but rarely is that person at the head of government like what's taking place here in the United States.
You said that the Border Patrol agents are literally shooting across the border into Mexico, guns, tear gas. Has anybody been killed on the Mexican side by what U.S. Border Patrol is doing?
Oh, yes. There's been killings of Border Patrol agents shooting into Mexico. Ezequiel Hernandez in 1997 was killed. And he was a shepherd boy that happened to be a U.S. citizen on the Mexican side, simply tending his sheep, literally a shepherd, 17 years old. And he was killed when there was bullets flying across the border. It was actually by the military, and this 17-year-old young man was killed. But as far as Border Patrol shooting across the border, Sergio Hernandez was killed in Chihuahua, Mexico, which is right across the street from El Paso and Ciudad Juarez, another teenage boy. And they come up with we were being threatened and so on and so forth. There's been several shootings. The ones I'm talking about now, that still goes on, by the way. The one I'm talking about now is tear gassing into Mexico. And when I was in that meeting with Rodney Scott and Bob Brewer, Rodney Scott, the Border Patrol chief, said it's legal to shoot into Mexico if you feel threatened. I go, I don't think so. So I went to the Mexican consulate in San Diego the very next day, and they said they cannot shoot into Mexico. And when I showed the videotape, the family that we had on videotape being tear gas was not throwing rocks. They were on the beach. There's only sand.
I would assume that if Mexican troops started shooting into Texas and California, there would be a huge uproar. What is Mexico Mexico doing, if anything, to prevent the United States from shooting into Mexico?
There's some of that. The Mexican government is looking into it, and I say don't look into it. It's already happened. One of the things that I've recommended, and they're looking into doing this, is having the Mexican government have cameras on the Mexican side so that there's proof. Because it's too easy to deny it. It never happened. Even though there is proof because television cameras have filmed it. I also brought up the fact that the U.S. Border Patrol and Customs and Border Patrol helicopters are flying into Mexican territory, again, against the law. And I said, we need to speak out against this. You're absolutely right. If it was the other direction, you would be hearing it all over the news. It's unbelievable this is taking place. Well, it's taking place right now. But it's the San Diego Border Patrol going into Mexico, shooting into Mexico, tear gassing kids. And what Rodney said was, oh, they were throwing rocks at us. And I go, well, right here in the video, it shows that you were tear gassing kids and women, the Border Patrol agents were. And then some of the people started throwing rocks. I don't condone the rock throwing, but if you're tear gassing my child and my wife, I might pick up something and say, hey, knock it off. This is unbelievable. It's something that we got to stand up to and say it's not acceptable. So we're working with other organizations, including attorney groups like the ACLU, to look at this evidence, to say we need to have this Border Patrol agent removed, Rodney Scott, and the Mexican government needs to step up to the plate and make more noise about this. It is not right. It's against international law. It's against the sovereignty of one's country. And the only time I know of an invasion was when the United States invaded Mexico in 1846. And stole half the territory, including where I'm sitting right now, California. What's happening right now is really happening. The Border Patrol in San Diego is out of control. We need to put an end to that.